All right, hello American National Government students. Hope you're having a good week. We're going to focus on the third chapter, the third week of material in the course. We're going to talk about federalism, and hopefully you've received your PowerPoint. If you go to slide number 2, we'll begin to kind of just talk about this. But the idea of federalism is essentially this: is that we've got a national government and we've got state and local government. Okay, we've got two different types of government within our country. It's both and, it's not either or, okay? And so you have to understand that in essence, as an American citizen, you've got dual citizenship. You enjoy national citizenship as an American, but you also enjoy the citizenship of the state in which you reside, okay? So in the case of Michigan here, you're a citizen of Michigan as well. We saw this with the COVID-19 stay-at-home orders and things of that nature within Michigan, which were longer than many other states. That was at the discretion of the governor of the state of Michigan and not at the discretion of President Trump, even though the president framed kind of a national response to COVID-19. Our system of government is such that the ultimate discretion, as stay-at-home orders and quarantines and things like that, they're done at the state level. Okay, so in other words, that's a reflection of state governments. Okay, was pressure brought to bear by the president on states to perhaps start reopening different sectors of the economy sooner? Yes, but the buck stops here. Decision making is with the governors or state legislatures, and again, that's a reflection of this dual citizenship that we enjoy as Americans. Okay. Each government is assumed to derive its powers directly from the people and to have sovereignty over the policy responsibilities assigned to it, okay, which is exactly what we saw with these individual, responses to COVID-19 by the various states. Michigan, Illinois, I'm trying to think of another state. There's another state that was pretty strict about stuff. We're very, preventing people from getting out and about until June, okay? Whereas other states were opening up as early as middle of May and things like that, okay? Again, that's a reflection of federalism, okay? If you go to slide number 3, if I can get my thing to work here, the idea of federalism was a result of political bargaining within the convention. Because remember, you had all of these delegates from individual states under the Articles of Confederation. Remember, a confederation is such that individual countries, or in our case, individual states, which were very similar to like almost independent countries, get together for a particular purpose. In this case, war against Great Britain. But nevertheless, they retained their own sovereignty, okay? And they were unwilling to give up all of their sovereignty to an overarching national government. And so the idea of preserving the sovereignty of the states, even as you create a national government, was the result of political bargaining, okay? Because again, the states existed prior to the United States of America, okay? You've got to realize it. Which came first, the chicken or the egg? In this case, the states came first, okay? The colonies came first, which became states, and then, the United States of America. And so federalism has passed through distinct stages, and again, I've got slides that'll show you this, but initially, a lot of power with the states and power with the federal government, but a lot of the power concentrated in the states. To the modern era, a lot of power is at the national government level to the expense of state governments, okay? We're going to see that because of various issues that have arisen, okay? Various economic changes in the country and some Supreme Court decisions and a civil war. I mean, just lots of things have changed how federalism is expressed, okay? So if you go on to slide number 4, okay, talking about national and state sovereignty, okay? The question of we the people versus we the states was precipitated by the failure of the Articles of Confederation. Okay, the Articles created a union of the states, again, confederation, think 13 individual circles, if you will, if I could draw this on a board, okay? And they alone had authority over the people. In other words, the state in which you resided had authority over you to compel you to pay taxes or to compel you to serve in the military, even though there was a national confederation under the Articles. Okay, because there's such a weak central government, the center of gravity of power under the Articles was at the periphery, okay, with the states. It was not at the center, okay? And the Constitution changed that, where they moved the center of gravity more towards the middle, even as they preserved the sovereignty of the states, okay? Again, you can see how that's, that's a complicated process. And it's a difficult process, and they sought to preserve it. I think they did a really good job. I like what former Justice Anthony Kennedy said. He said in the creation of the Constitution and the creation of the United States of America under the Constitution, it was if the founders split the atom. Okay, because again, most governments at that time were unitary central governments. The individual localities, regions, counties, boroughs, okay, had next to no power. All the power was at the center with a king or a monarch. And in the American system, I like that term, they split the atom, okay? In other words, they did something absolutely remarkable, absolutely exceptional, in that they sought to preserve power at both ends of the spectrum there, okay? And so, the national government under the Articles, couldn't tax citizens, couldn't conscript citizens and force them to serve in the military, okay? It couldn't regulate the interstate commerce between states, okay? Its directives applied only to the states, and the states often ignored them, okay? Again, we talked about this, that if taxes are optional, the states took the option and didn't pay the taxes, okay? So the only feasible option or solution to the problem was to give the federal government direct authority over the people. Again, I've talked about this before, but one of the key differences is the federal government can directly tell you what to do. The federal government can directly tell you, you will pay income taxes, period. If not, these nice little guys and gals called the IRS will come and give you a visit, okay? The framers also wanted to preserve the states, okay? States had their own governing constitutions and governing history going back to the colonial era. While they consider themselves American, many most closely identified with their state, okay? So therein lies that tension. If you go to slide number 5, continuing here, before this point in history, sovereignty, okay, the idea of who's in charge, where does the ultimate authority reside, okay? In the British system, authority was what they called the king in Parliament, okay? So sovereignty in the British system lay within the Parliament, and the idea of, Parliament was their Congress. Okay, you had an upper house and a lower house. You had the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Okay, and within that, sovereignty lay within the Parliament, even as it represented the king. Okay, and so what the founders did is they diffused sovereignty. Okay, they moved it to the national government, but they also moved it to the states. So it was in both places. Okay, again. In the British system, it lay within that one central area. And what the founders did, again, this is that splitting the atom metaphor, is they moved sovereignty nationally, and they kept it locally, okay? So each level directly governs the residents within its assigned territory, okay? Each level has authority not subject to the other's approval. Again, going back to the COVID-19 crisis, okay? And that was part of the controversy. Trump's telling the governors what to do, and there was some merit to that. There is a national response to a pandemic, but again, the ultimate responsibility and specific policy choices lay within the states, okay, and the governors there, okay? Each level of government, whether it's the national and the local, okay, or the state, is constitutionally protected. Okay, national government cannot abolish a state, and the states cannot abolish the national government. Okay, so just realize that there. I'm trying to get my PowerPoint to move, and it's stuck. Okay, go to slide number 6. Computers are great when they work, right? Aren't they? But when they don't. In fact, I've had great success with computers. I've always had wrestling matches with printers. How about you? You're just like, come on, print. Okay, so to the next slide, talking about what a unitary system is, okay? Again, in 1787, other nations of the world were governed by a unitary system, okay? Think of monarchy. All the power, the center of gravity, sovereignty lay within the king, okay? Or the central government. Local and regional governments didn't have sovereignty, okay? They were all beholden to the center, okay? And they only had authority to the degree granted by the national government, okay? Which could arbitrarily withdraw a grant whenever they wanted to, okay? This situation applies to America's local governments, okay? As I'm recording this, I'm in Bridgman right now, but depending on where you live, okay? The local governments are not sovereign, okay? But instead they derive their authority from their respective state governments, which can, though rarely, choose to abolish a local unit of government. Can that happen? Sure, if a state becomes insolvent, okay? Or, so a local community becomes insolvent, okay? They go bankrupt. And then suddenly now the state's got to come in and fund that community. And so what happens is usually local government is abolished, okay, your mayors and council members, and the state legislature jumps in. In other words, hey, we'll give you money, and you're like, yeah, thanks for the money, right? But the problem is there's always strings attached when a larger unit of government gives money, and you have to relinquish some form of control. In this case, a local government would not make decisions, that state legislature would, okay? That's something called Dillon's rule, okay? That's actually from a Supreme Court decision, I believe it was an Iowa state court decision in the 1860s or 70s, I believe. Thomas Jefferson, okay, contrasted that. He felt that local municipalities had inalienable rights, just like we have inalienable rights, and we've talked about this in previous lectures, okay? He held that local municipalities had inalienable rights, and they do not derive their legitimacy from the state governments, okay? So he was kind of more of a, state, leave the local communities alone. That shifted again, according to the Supreme Court decision in Iowa, called Dillon's rule, that basically makes it such that a local community's government can be dissolved. Another situation, I think Detroit went bankrupt and the state got involved. Flint, Michigan a few years ago with all the water problems, okay? That is something where, and I don't think it happened, I don't know all the extent of it, but the state got more involved in that particular community, and the city lost a lot of its autonomy because of the problems that they had there, okay? If you go to slide number 8, again, sometimes pictures are better for you to see this, but you can kind of see the comparison and contrast with different systems, okay? In a unitary system there, you can see on the left, the national government basically, dominates the local units, okay? The central government has all the powers, and the local units are totally dependent upon it. Again, think many governments in Europe in the 18th century, okay? And moving on in the middle there, a confederal system, okay? The center of gravity is at the local level, okay? And so the local level has all the power, and excuse me, and the central government is dependent on the individual local units for its existence. And this is exactly what happened under the Articles of Confederation. All the power, all the sovereignty, right, lay within the individual states. The national government didn't have a president, didn't have a judicial system, taxes were optional, okay? And then you move on to the right, a federal system. This is the system of the United States of America under the Constitution, okay, adopted in 1787. The flow of power goes in both directions, okay? It's shared, and both the central and local governments hold powers independent of the others, okay? So again, a lot of times with my students, this picture tends to provide a lot of clarity, okay? If you go to the next slide there, that would be slide number 9, you can see the division of federal and state powers again, okay? If you look at the left side, the national government, again, a lot of times the national government is supposed to deal with external issues, okay, generally. Regulates foreign and interstate commerce, but again, big picture stuff. They coin money, they provide an army and navy, they declare war, again, external things. They conduct foreign relations. They establish the courts. Okay, they exercise powers implied from the express powers. Okay, again, those enumerated powers in Article 1, Section 8 we talked about for Congress. And then you've got what's called concurrent powers. That's national and state governments. Okay, they both can do these things. They both can levy taxes. They both can borrow money. They both can spend for the general welfare. They both can establish courts. They both can enact and enforce laws. Okay, but then look at what state governments are uniquely tasked to do under the Constitution, okay? They regulate intra-state commerce. Again, commerce within the state. Interstate is between states. Intrastate is within that state, okay? They establish local governmental systems, okay? They administer local elections. And then this is key because this has changed so much in the modern era due to a lot of Supreme Court decisions. In fact, I wrote about this in the book that I wrote with a couple of co-authors. They protect the public's health, welfare, and morals. Okay, usually health, welfare, and morals was done at the local state level. Okay, think Obamacare. What's that? That's health, isn't it? That's done at the national level now. Okay, that was a congressional decision, okay, a law passed by Congress that has nullified states providing a lot of that, okay? Think welfare, okay? I mean, think of the great welfare programs that were devised in the 1930s and the 1960s, under FDR's programs in the 1930s, under Lyndon Johnson's Great Society in the 1960s, Medicare, Medicaid, okay, things like that are, a lot of that's done at the national level instead of the local level. And then morals, okay? Think of decisions like the Supreme Court regarding abortion, okay? Applying a one-size-fits-all decision about abortion on the nation and not allowing individual states to make the decision. Or how about the Obergefell decision legalizing gay marriage throughout the country? Okay, again, taking moral decisions out of the local level where the individual people in individual regions can make decisions conducive to what they want. And now you've got a one-size-fits-all policy, okay? The original Constitution wanted that done at the local level because they thought that the individual people should be able to decide that for themselves. And now courts have gotten involved in certain areas. So it's very interesting. We'll talk about that in future chapters. All right, I've probably gone a little bit longer on this section than I wanted, but hey, that's enough for now. We'll start with slide 10 next.